Part 142. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1416. Although Greet said that it will be cured soon, in fact, he still calmed down and checked all the items that could be checked. Blood routine, electrocardiogram, coagulation function. If there is no way to measure it, even liver and kidney function should be checked. On the last day before the treatment started, in the tree hole sealed by the eldest prince, Gretel and the queen sat face to face, having a final pre-operative conversation. Behind the queen, two princesses and a prince sit side by side, and the surface of the seal shines. While the queen listened to him, she reached out and touched the emerald-colored solid, always paying attention. Greet was very suspicious that the eldest prince was also listening and communicating with his mother in this way. Thank God the Lord of Thunder is not here. Maybe it's because they haven't become a family yet, maybe because as the Lord of Thunder, it's weird to stand on either side, but he didn't come at all today. This also made Greet feel relieved. If the teacher was here, it would be hard to say some harsh words. He was afraid that the teacher would scold him. During the treatment process, due to the massive growth and changes of organs and tissues, rapid protein metabolism may occur, exceeding the carrying capacity of the patient's liver and kidneys. The queen's left hand was clenched tightly into a fist, and her right hand was pressed on the jadeite, her nails losing color one by one. Greet said solemnly. However, we have studied this possibility and have a mature solution. Elder Fahim has taught World Tree how to dialyze. If the prince is in need, World Tree can also help save the situation. Behind him, Elder Fahim moved his white beard and nodded solemnly. Yes, I asked Gushu to use dialysis to treat hundreds of patients, as well as monsters that far exceeded their number. This method is very mature, Your Majesty can rest assured. Even though she had already known about dialysis and had read the paper written by Greet, the queen still turned her gaze and looked at the elder for a short while. Finally, he breathed a sigh of relief. Then please. Apart from that, is there any danger? Although the success rate of heart surgery using limited wishing technique is already very high, the possibility of accidents cannot be ruled out. Once an accident occurs, we will immediately activate a backup plan. Gretel flicked his fingers, and a light and shadow unfolded from his hand. Open the chest immediately and use limb regeneration to make a normal heart. However, limb regeneration also takes time. The queen's face turned pale and the blood faded. What will the body do during this period? How can it supply blood to the whole body without a heart? We are ready for extracorporeal circulation, Greet replied steadily. Although the probability of problems with the limited wishing technique was very small, he always felt that it would be better to be more prepared. Fortunately, too much time has passed since he started researching tetralogy of Falat and now can treat it. With this time difference, Gretel has teamed up with Yggdrasil to complete the extracorporeal circulation. This is convenient. Once dialysis is done, it will not be difficult to switch from dialysis to extracorporeal circulation. The specific method is that I am responsible for opening the chest, cutting off the blood vessels, and pulling out the blood vessels. The World Tree is responsible for extending the twigs, allowing blood to circulate in the twigs, sucking away waste, and even providing oxygen. Then, the World Tree provides a powerful driving force, allowing the blood to enter the next blood vessel and flow directly into the whole body. There is no problem with the pressure of blood flow or the power of pumping blood. As he spoke, he flicked his fingers again, and the image stared by his eyes, recorded and controlled by the core of meditation, and outlined by silent phantom, was played in the tree hole. A half-sized demon pig was laid flat in a tree hole, anesthetized, its chest opened, and its blood vessels cut off. At the same time, the World Tree stretched out a branch, and the end gradually expanded and changed, becoming the shape of a heart. Just from the appearance, there are aorta, pulmonary artery, pulmonary vein, superior and inferior vena cava, all the pipes. Gretel flicked his fingers slightly, and the scalpel held by the mage's hand and the tissue forceps turned into the mage's hand kept flying inside the demon pig's chest. Free, clamp, cut off. When the first blood vessel was disconnected, a tissue forceps clicked on a certain blood vessel in the heart of the twig. Then, this blood vessel quietly extended a length, and connected tightly with the end of the blood vessel that Greet had cut off and pulled out. Within 10 seconds, all blood vessels were connected. Bang bang, bang bang, the heart of the twig jumped extremely powerfully. The queen subconsciously pressed her wrist and found that the beating rhythm of the twig's heart was not much different from her own. I will play the next section faster, Greet said softly. In the light and shadow, the scalpel made a deft stroke on the heart, cutting off a small piece of myocardium and discarding the remaining part. Limb regeneration. The unique warm light fell immediately. Then the lights and shadows were blurred, as if they were being driven 10 times faster. In the pool of blood, the small piece of myocardium grew little by little, changed its shape little by little, and expanded to both sides. The queen watched intently and breathlessly, watching as the small piece of flesh grew into 2 chambers, and then 2 more chambers, partitions, valves, and blood vessels connecting to the outside world, growing bit by bit. Finally, when it grew into a complete heart with several blood vessels, the light image suddenly slowed down as if it was stuck. Then, the scalpel and the mage's hand flew up again. Clamp the blood vessels. Separate blood vessels. Leave the heart of the twig and connect with the corresponding blood vessels of the new heart. After the treatment, the endothelium of blood vessels, the muscles in the middle layer of blood vessels, and the outer skin of blood vessels are bridged and stretched layer by layer, and the connections are normal. The connection speed this time is slower than the previous separation, but it is also completed within 20 seconds. The mage held the heart in his hands, slowly placed it back into the pericardium, and kneaded it several times. When I let go again, the new heart started beating rhythmically. It's amazing seeing this. The queen took a long breath and subconsciously made a praying gesture, with the silver moon shining on her fingertips. Gretel couldn't help but let out a breath. Yeah, it's so amazing, it deserves to be the world tree. I really want to steal it back. If I steal it back, I will have an automatic dialysis machine and extracorporeal circulation equipment. By the way, this thing can also be used instead of ECMO. Snapped. In his breast pocket, the oak staff shrunk into the shape of a pencil, jumped up and hit him hard on the head. What's the use of hitting me? You should learn it quickly. Gretel grabbed it from his forehead, shook it vigorously in his hand, communicated with his mind, and secretly rebuked it. You don't know how to do dialysis or extracorporeal circulation. You can't save people when they are needed. How can I not find another tree? Not to mention the world tree, you can just top an ancient tree. Then you advance. You advance. You advance. In the sea of consciousness, the oak staff continued to make a fuss. Gretel tried her best to ignore it and continued to communicate with the queen. I have gone through all the risks I can think of, and I have also gone through all the solutions I can think of. Finally, I added. In short, as a last resort, the ancient tree seal can always save the life of the eldest prince and let him sleep in the emerald dream. After the chromosome is repaired, you can take a piece of limb and use clone technique to clone a new body, and then transfer his consciousness. Ah, it's nice to have that last resort. As a doctor, I really hate having to say to family members, we have tried our best. If it is absolutely necessary, this is the only way. The queen took a long breath, her face full of sadness. She stroked the huge emerald-colored seal, placed her forehead lightly on it, and half closed her eyes. You heard everything, right? What do you think? Mother, I am willing to accept treatment. The surface of the emerald seal rippled gently, a clear light appeared, and it condensed into a new figure in the tree hole. Slender, tall, With handsome features, he is somewhat similar to the sleeping boy in the seal. It is clearly the appearance of the great prince's spiritual body that Gretel saw in the emerald dream. You have done so much research and put in so much effort for a smooth treatment. It can even be said that the risks have been minimized. Now, it is my turn to take the risk. Mother, I also want to recover as soon as possible and take on my responsibilities as soon as possible. Just let me get treatment, don't worry, it'll be fine. After saying that, he nodded to Gretel, smiled at his younger siblings, and then disappeared without a trace. It was obvious that appearing in this way, even with the help of the ancient tree, was still a heavy burden for him. The queen's half-raised palm froze in the air. After stopping for a while, he slumped down and looked at his sleeping son in the seal with tears streaming down his face. It took a long time before I took a long breath. If the treatment fails and we have to sleep in the seal, wouldn't it be better to transfer consciousness as quickly as possible? If the treatment fails, I'm not sure how long the seal can last, maybe 1 or 2 years, maybe many, many years. Greet replied without any assurance. In fact, there are elves in the fertile forest whose genes have collapsed and have been sleeping for decades. This shows that the power of the seal to maintain vital signs is very powerful. But, theoretically speaking, it's better to move faster. The faster the transfer, the smaller the damage should be, right? He looked back at Elder Fahim uncertainly. The elder looked embarrassed, lowered his head and pondered for a long time, gritted his teeth and nodded. That's the theory. Then, please help us deliver the message and invite a necromancer to come over. The queen stood up resolutely. He bowed to Gretel and strode out. I'll do it to convince the elders. Just stay for a few months to a year and make a clone body. They shouldn't stop me anymore. Greet stared at her dumbfounded. The queen stood up with her head held high, her back straight, and her steps as sonorous as a warrior's. No. Why did your painting style suddenly change? How does it feel, as if the statues of Mazu and Guanyin, which are gentle and benevolent in the eyes of the Chinese people, have become the statues of motherland in Stalingrad? Although he was muttering in his heart, he still followed the queen's instructions and sent a message to the other side of the ocean. Invite a necromancer of level 17 or above who is proficient in the clone technique. You can bring your own casting materials. If you don't have any on hand, there is also a copy here on Everlasting Island. The moment he received the message, Archmage Hines jumped up. If he hadn't been too overwhelmed, he could have done a somersault. Praise be to the Lord of Plagues. Thank you, Plague Lord. We necromancers can finally go to the Island of Eternal Gathering today. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1417. If it hadn't been informed by the Mage Tower, the elves would have been picked up by a ship. If his airship hadn't been damaged, Archmage Haynes would have driven the airship, grabbed an elf to lead the way, and headed straight to the Island of Eternal Judgment. Now, just wait for someone to pick you up. The airship of the Parliament stayed in the Mage Tower and ran in both directions with the Eagle Kingdom. Airships are very expensive. Production capacity is also limited. I can't bear to take away one ship here and not bring it back, and another one over there will be destroyed. Even if he could only stay in the Mage Tower and wait, it couldn't stop Archmage Hines from being in a good mood. He hummed a song that sounded like ghosts crying and wolves howling, and he packed up the magic materials at hand again and again, and again. Especially the alchemy vessels for making cloned bodies and the casting materials needed to release the clone spell, which require one more piece, then another, and then one more. Although Little Greet said that it would be okay if he didn't bring him over, there were preparations on Everlasting Island, but he still didn't know the way the elves behaved. When I see people like them every day, their noses are not noses, and their eyes are not eyes. When they are 8 feet away, they wish they could be covered with bubbles. Even necromancers are not allowed to go to the island. Do they have materials for necromancy? That must have been taken out by little Greet himself. It must be the one they sent before, when little Greet said he wanted to study cloning. How could little Gretel pay for the matter in Black Crow Swamp? This is completely impossible. Definitely make sure to keep a few extra copies, keep enough, and keep 1 or 2 copies to teach little Greet. Let him practice it himself under his guidance and feel the changes of this spell for himself. Our necromancy system is not just for killing people. Not just those who play with dead people's bones and corpses. The technique of cloning can be said to be the pinnacle of research on the human body and soul transfer, and is more powerful than any healing spell. Oops, why hasn't the elves ship arrived yet? If he doesn't come to pick him up, the teacher will rush over from Nevis. Archmage Heinz looked forward to the stars and the moon, and finally saw an elf ship with a long and narrow hull and fusiform shapes at both ends, flapping its wings and coming through the clouds and fog. Pick him up, load his luggage, park under the tower all night, then turn around and leave. The galloping speed made Archmage Heinz think that their eldest prince was about to die. Go faster. The faster he walked, the less likely it was that the teacher would catch up and take away his right to land on the island. Your Excellency the Immortal, damn it, I didn't grab the chance to go to Elf Island. Although it is impossible for him to travel so far away and not stay in Nevis for a year or two. The necromancy school is only so legendary, there is no one to replace him when he leaves. That old zombie won't crawl out. Besides, Heinz has already advanced to level 19. It will be beneficial for him to go to Elf Island to broaden his horizons at this time. As a teacher, he cannot compete with his disciples. Everything was ready, and finally the day came for treatment. Behind Gretel, including the teacher Thunder Lord, 6 legends were waiting. Senior brother Burbo is responsible for guarding the Well of Eternity, ensuring that there is no glitch in this thing, that it does not shut down during operation, and that the output does not fluctuate. The Lord of Thunder is responsible for monitoring the situation of the entire array, ensuring that the Well of Eternity outputs power and transforms the array into natural power, operates smoothly, and outputs power evenly and stably. Elder Amat is responsible for monitoring the output of the magic circle to ensure that the magic circle accurately locks all chromosome points and the casting process is correct. Elder Fahim is responsible for paying attention to the vitality of the eldest prince and ensuring that there are no problems with World Tree's dialysis operation and extracorporeal circulation operation. In addition, there are 2 legends. One is responsible for unlocking the sealing circle of the eldest prince and is ready to seal it at any time, and the other is the chief physician of the eldest prince for many years and is ready to help at any time. The most luxurious assistant lineup in history. Gretel silently praised himself, and couldn't help but mutter. I have never fought such a rich battle. This battle does not include Her Majesty the Queen, the Princess, and the Prince who were standing outside the cave of the ancient tree, looking forward to it. One is a legend, one is a half-step legend, and 2 are high level. As for the other members of the royal family, the relatives of the royal family, those who find reasons to express their concern, those who come to observe the casting of spells, those who come to watch the fun, they are a large area of Wanjiang. Among the 12 elven nobles, in terms of kinship, everyone can be related to the royal family. Although Archmage Heinz was already a half-legend, facing this scene, he felt extremely insignificant and wanted to shrink behind the Lord of Thunder. Hold it, hold it. He is from Thunderhorn and I am from Black Crow Swamp. No matter what, we cannot let the other party see the joke. We, Black Crow Swamp, still want to get the Plague Lord there. Greet glanced far away, pretending not to see his expression. Well, unless you are very familiar with him and carefully discern the look on the necromancer's face, there's nothing interesting about it. He greeted the legends who came to help one by one in order and confirmed that everything was normal in the parts they were responsible for. After asking questions one by one, it was Archmage Heinz's turn. Greet bowed slightly and saluted. Archmage, could you please make a special trip? Are the preparations for the cloning technique ready? Everything is normal. The cloning tissue is in place and can it be used immediately? It's normal and can be used. Archmage Hines has been busy in the past few days, assembling all the alchemy equipment and debugging the instruments. As soon as the signal is sent, the alchemical potion can be injected immediately, and then, when the clone tissue is delivered, the spell can be cast immediately. OK. Greet nodded calmly and returned to the front of the team. He turned back to the legends, made a gentle mage salute, and raised his voice. As a 14th level little mage, he assigned tasks to the legends, including his own teacher, and he didn't show any stage fright. Then, please take your positions and start taking action according to the established steps. Please. The legendary mages nodded and dispersed. Archmage Hines also returned to the laboratory he chose, sat upright in front of the alchemy utensils, and began to wait for news. You must be able to clone once, you must be able to clone once. No, the treatment must go smoothly, it must go smoothly. If all goes well with the treatment, it means that the eldest prince can successfully recover without having to clone a body and start from scratch. But, I really want to clone it. The materials for cloning are expensive and time-consuming. If you are not specialized in this research or have a sponsor to pay for it, it is impossible to clone for fun. Especially cloning an elf. Clone an elf prince. Clone an elf prince who was cursed by the Demon King as a fetus and whose chromosomes were recently repaired. It would be a real pity to lose this opportunity. Gretel had no regrets. He stood upright in the tree hole of the world tree, watching the teacher and elder Amat check the chromosome repair device for the last time, and finally confirmed that everything was normal. Every detail of the entire device, including the basic array, the part connected to the microscope, the locking part, and the output part, slowly passed through my mind. Even if you can't rub your hands now, you must remember and memorize it. I will try to imitate one when I return to Nevis in the hospital. By then, our own hospital will also be a high-end hospital that can perform gene therapy. Of course, the best thing is to burn the entire spell into the meditation world. When the time comes, mobilize the spell model and rub it directly with your hands. Outside the tree hole, signals came one after another. The Well of Eternity's output is normal. It can be transmitted at any time. The chromosome repair device is working properly. It can be started at any time. The cloning device is normal. You can cast spells at any time. The world tree is ready. Gretel took a deep breath. Even though everything was prepared, verified more than once, and animal experiments were conducted more than once, he still felt short of breath, his heart beat faster, and his palms couldn't help but feel hot and sweaty. He clenched his fist tightly, stretched out his fingers, and issued an order loudly. Unlock the seal. Transfer the patient. Unlock the seal of the Great Prince. At the door of the tree cave, the elf spellcaster who was responsible for the signal center immediately passed on his order. Move to the target tree hole. In the ancient tree, the legend in charge of the sealing circle flew his hands and shot out spell runes one after another. The emerald seal gradually disintegrated, revealing the young and thin body of the eldest prince. Then, several rays of light fell on the eldest prince in no particular order. Life breath monitoring array, Greet's vital signs monitoring suit, vital signs maintenance magic, transformation floating disk, feather fall technique. According to the previously rehearsed steps, 10 minutes after sending the signal, the eldest prince should be sent to the world tree. However, after only 5 minutes, Gretel couldn't help but walk to the door of the tree hole and looked up. If it were a previous life, there would have been a flat car pushing by at least 2 medical staff at this time. There might even be someone kneeling on the flat car, and there are a few more surrounding the flat car. Those holding balloons, doing extra cardiac compressions, and carrying infusion bags. The last one has become less common in recent years, mainly the newly replaced flat carts, which usually have vertical poles on which bags of injections are hung. Then, he saw a small flying ship shooting towards him. The flying ship rushed into the tree hole, the top of the ship unfolded, and the rich breath of life rushed towards the face. Little Gretel. Oh, Sister Cecilia. Gretel greeted the flying ship happily. The legendary ancient tree is so convenient. It can be big or small, fly or swim. It has its own life-sustaining magic circle. While acting as a flat cart, it can also help patients die. Elder Amat also said hello to the legendary ancient tree. Then he flew out of the mage's hand and moved the eldest prince into the tree hole with all his hands. On the operating table that was integrated with the magic circle, a bright green light lit up. Life detection, life support, and ready-to-go sealing techniques were all prepared one by one. Unrelated personnel retreated. Greet brushed his hands, changed clothes, and walked in with his hands raised. Chromosome repair, begin. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 1418. The moment the ancient tree flying ship rushed out of the tree hole, the queen stood up suddenly and stepped forward quickly. From now on, her son's life will be in the hands of little Gretel and the legends of the treatment team he chairs. There is no turning back. There is no way to go back to where you were. Success is a success. Her son can regain his health, can walk, run, talk, can be by her side, hold her hand and call her mother. If not, her son can only sleep in the seal, waiting for the new body to be cloned. If she fails to survive until this point, then she will lose her son forever. Ms. Silvery Moon bless you. She clasped her hands on her chest, murmured and repeated, looking up to the sky. The bright and clear sky did not give her any comfort. In fact, the scorching sun was high and there was no moonlight, which only made her feel more worried. Mother, don't worry. Next to her, Princess Norrell was close to her mother, holding her arm firmly. Little Gretel has never failed to treat her so far, and this treatment plan has been verified repeatedly. Master Harrell has also made a prediction, and everything will be fine. Mom knows. The queen leaned on her shoulder for a while, struggled to get up, and walked towards the tree hole of the world tree. It was only a few miles away, a distance that could usually only be reached by teleportation, but she staggered and almost tripped several times. Don't worry, Mom, Mom is the queen, and she has you, Mom, she will definitely hold on, and she must not mess up first. Accompanied by the support of her children, she came to the tree hole of the world tree, sat down and waited. Sit from morning to dusk, from dusk to night, from the time the sun shines high to the setting of the silver moon. Finally, the tree hole opened silently, and Elder Amat and the Lord of Thunder walked out one after another. How was it? Was it successful? The queen immediately stood up and stepped forward quickly. Elder Amat looked exhausted, shook his head, and nodded again. The first stage went very smoothly. The chromosome modification is completed, and then it's about the little guy. The moment he shook his head, the queen's feet weakened and she almost fell down, but Princess Norrell held her firmly. The princess stared at the Lord of Thunder with a pair of clear eyes. Seeing his calm expression, she didn't feel too panicked. Don't worry, Mother. Didn't I say it before? In the first stage, it takes at least 12 hours to modify the chromosomes. Now that the modification is completed, everything goes well, which is the best news. Yes, it's good news that the first stage goes well. The queen closed her eyes, took a long breath, and then saluted the two legends. You two have worked hard today. Please go and have a rest. You don't have to accompany me. I have to wait until Anio comes out. Elder Amat had also been tense all day. Hearing this, he nodded and left on his own. The Lord of Thunder stayed as a matter of course, found a seat near the Queen, and sat down peacefully. "I'll wait for a while too. It's the first time for this little guy to preside over such a big thing. If he doesn't keep an eye on it, I won't worry." In the tree hole, the news that the Queen and others were guarding outside reached Gretel's ears immediately. Gretel just nodded, not paying much attention. He has seen too many such things. Those rescue operations, there are often anxious family members waiting outside the operating room. Hope, pray, hold each other's hands to support each other, and pray for loved ones in the operating room. Every time the door to the operating room opens, I stand up immediately to greet it, just to ask, "Doctor, how is my family?" The walls outside the operating room are where more devout prayers are heard than in the church. In the operating room, he is a doctor and a healer. No matter how high status the people waiting outside are, they are just family members of the patients. Everything that needs to be discussed has been explained clearly, and any unexpected situations that need to be explained have also been explained clearly. Gretel turned his mind slightly, flew out a mage's hand, and knocked on the wall of the tree cave. "Your Majesty Yggdrasil, please get ready. I'm going to start." On the cave wall, the clear light turned bright and dark, then darkened and brightened again. Vital signs support circle. Life-sustaining detection array. Maintain cardiac ultrasound and maintain heart-shape detection magic. Prepare the limited wishing spell array. He gave orders in an orderly manner, sentence by sentence. According to previous experimental results, the modification of chromosomes will not immediately lead to changes in organs. Therefore, as long as the treatment is completed quickly before the cells start to replace. The light of the first limited wishing spell lit up and faintly sank into the body of the eldest prince. Gretel held his breath, staring at the beating electrocardiogram, cardiac ultrasound images, and the ever-changing cardiac CT images, concentrating on guiding the limited wishing technique. First, the defective ventricular septum is allowed to grow inwards from all directions and close quietly without leaking blood. The ventricular septum is filled up and the atrial septum is repaired. Then make a vertical incision on the narrowed pulmonary artery, and grow the incised part to thicken the diameter and relieve the stenosis. The incompetent aortic valve and pulmonary valve grow outward according to a predetermined shape until they can be closed completely. Then remove the valvular vegetations, remove the calcified and fibrotic parts of the myocardium, and guide them to regrow. Fortunately, the limited wishing technique is quite powerful. Especially under ultrasound and CT, it is not much different from visual surgery. Facing an elf whose body has not been exercised since he was a child and who relies entirely on natural growth and can almost be regarded as a level 0 elf, the limited wishing technique of the seventh ring is completely sufficient. When the brilliance of a limited wishing spell completely dissipated, all the treatment purposes for this heart had been achieved. Gretel fell back on the stool with weak hands and feet. This limited wish-making spell is more tiring than 10 surgeries in a row, let him rest. The key is to do the surgery, and you can still be distracted a little during it. When changing surgical instruments, when applying patches, when suturing, when the surgeon and assistant are connecting. You don't have to be extremely nervous every moment. Unlike the limited wishing technique, which is guided entirely by mental power, if your mind wanders a little, your heart will grow crooked. Having said that, if you can use the limited wishing technique, it would be better not to have any surgery. Less bleeding, less tissue removal, and less damage to the patient. As for the magician, if you work harder, it will be harder. How? How? One on the left and one on the right, 2 legendary elders, one responsible for sealing and the other the former chief physician of the prince, couldn't wait to ask. Greet used the cleansing technique, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and pointed at the light screen in front of him. "It's normal, the electrocardiogram, cardiac ultrasound, and cardiac CT are all completely normal. Unfortunately, the two legendary elders only memorized the electrocardiogram book. It's still too early to learn and apply it. As for the heart ultrasound, those twisting and twisting patterns are even more difficult to detect. Fortunately, the life breath detection array showed that everything was normal and even much stronger than before. It should be, everything went smoothly. Then, shall I go and talk to the Queen? The elder in charge of the seal breathed a sigh of relief. The biggest difficulty is the heart, and the most dangerous link is also the heart. As long as your heart is fine, you can take your time later. It's okay if he leaves for a while, you won't need him to start immediately. Go ahead. Greet closed her eyes and replied softly. Let her rest assured and tell her that there are still some minor problems later. I will just fix them one after another. In a few hours, the treatment will be over. Do you want to sleep for a while? Do you want a treatment? Hello. Hello. The patient has no heartbeat. Where? While Greet opened his eyes, he rolled and crawled towards him. After taking a look at the electrocardiogram, he took a deep breath and sat down again. Elder, if you don't bring something like this, it will scare people to death. Hey, you're still quite energetic, the elf elder chuckled behind him and reached out to rub his hair. I thought you were going to collapse. No matter how hard you fall, you can still jump up when you hear something is wrong with the patient. Gretel muttered. Frightened by this, all his sleepiness flew out of the sky, and he simply threw himself in front of the eldest prince, and then checked carefully. Blood oxygen level. Blood gas analysis. Uric acid content analysis. Your Excellency World Tree, please taste this drop of blood to see if you need to start dialysis. Behind him, the inner chamber of the tree hole quietly closed. The elf elder had a smile on his face, shook his head and walked out, coming to the Queen. The second stage of treatment has been completed, and the heart is recovering well. Don't worry, the last stage is not difficult, it's just some minor repairs, it will be quick. Really, then it will be over soon. The Queen finally showed a little smile, and when she looked at the tree hole, her expression became much more relaxed. He clasped his hands on his chest and murmured. This child can finally recover. There are actually many projects for minor repairs and repairs. Thanks to the Queen's constitution and the supply of natural power at all costs, the child was born safely and did not become a demon. However, the price is that there is more than one deformity on the body. Congenital heart disease is only the most important one. In addition, there are airway stenosis, congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis, and a series of other diseases, large and small. As for leukemia, hemophilia, thalassemia, etc., Gretel can only say that he hopes not to have them, and it is best not to have them. There is really nothing we can do. We can only check and treat slowly after this wave of treatment is completed. He patiently checked and treated each patient one by one. Diseases that can be detected by CT and MRI and can be treated have basically been treated. Anyway, most of these diseases are caused by chromosomal abnormalities. As long as the surgery is cured, there should be no more problems, huh? He even had his clubbed fingers trimmed. The Queen and Princess are also handsome, and the eldest prince is also very handsome mentally and physically. He turned around and stretched out his hands, and the 10 fingers were like 10 small drumsticks. How ugly. As a healer, of course I have to fix it easily, it's just a matter of convenience. Once the heart disease is cured, the clubbing of the fingers will no longer occur. Greet tinkered and tinkered, and the light of the limited wishing spell continued to shine, sweeping the eldest prince from head to toe. Finally, he took a step back and nodded to the eldest prince's attending physician, the elf elder who was still inside. Okay, it's time to wake up. Confirm that the heart condition is normal. Confirm that the life breath is normal. Can wake up. The elder took a few steps forward, completed the inspections one by one in an orderly manner, made a series of magic gestures, and began to wake up the eldest prince. Stop the life support magic, stop the anesthesia spell, and most importantly, touch his spirit and wake him up from the emerald dream. Greet stood nearby the whole time, paying attention to every gesture the elder made, every spell he cast, and most importantly, closely monitoring the various life monitoring magics nearby. Watching the eldest prince's breathing gradually become faster and his heartbeat speeding up slightly, the eyeballs under his eyelids began to move. He opened his eyes and looked left and right. Ah! Blood pressure. Blood pressure. Why is the blood pressure so high? Seal it quickly. Be careful of cerebral hemorrhage. Cat went to see the wandering earth too today. The height of human imagination. It's so beautiful and magnificent. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1419. When Gretel hit a high note, the elf legend behind him had already calmed down and stepped forward. With his hands flying, various magic runes lit up, and at the same time, the wall of the cave of the world tree shone brightly with blue light. The power of nature roared and flowed, and the power mobilized by the world tree was induced by the legendary mage, turned into dense runes, and fell on the great prince. From light green to dark green, from dark green to dark green, layer upon layer, imprinted on his skin. Most of it flashed in and disappeared without a trace, leaving only the last bit, which outlined mysterious patterns one after another on the eldest prince's somewhat immature face. With more and more patterns, the eldest prince's breathing became more and more steady, and his blood pressure also dropped visibly. 220/160, 180/120, 160/100, 140/90. Finally, it stabilized at 120/75, fluctuating slightly up and down, and no longer racing wildly. A body that is too weak cannot withstand too strong mental power, the legendary elf said slowly with a smile. Your Highness Anio, we all know that you are anxious to reunite with your family, but you really need to be patient. Follow what we said, rein in your mental energy and let your body slowly adapt. Yes, that's it, take your time. With a calm voice, the eldest prince slowly opened his eyes and nodded to the legendary elder who had been responsible for his treatment. Then, he supported his body on his elbows, sat up slowly, and nodded to Gretel. Sorry, I was too excited at the moment. Don't worry, I have calmed down and there will be no more problems. Thank you for your hard work during this period. Gretel let out a long sigh of relief and finally took his hands off his belt. What a pity, he already had a handful of nitroglycerin capsules in his hand. Although legendary level mental power was poured directly into a weak zero level body, it was very likely that something would go wrong, but he really had no good solution. Even though he had deduced that his blood pressure might be extremely high when making the plan, he had no other option but to resort to magic. A clever woman cannot make a meal without rice, and a good doctor cannot make a cure without medicine. He didn't have sodium nitroprusside injection, metoprolol tartrate injection, or even nitroglycerin injection. Although nitroglycerin injection has many side effects, and the side effects are obvious, and it will not be injected into the patient's blood vessels unless it is absolutely necessary, it is still better than nothing. Thank God, the legendary boss reacted quickly and sealed the seal in time, and finally rescued him. He stretched out his hand to help, but the eldest prince retracted his hand and smiled at him, obviously trying to walk on his own. Gretel had no choice but to take the oak stick that had been busy all day, and regardless of its shouts of "You're giving me to someone else, and you don't love me anymore," he stuffed it into the hands of the eldest prince. Serve as a crutch for him. This time, Prince Anio did not refuse. He held onto the oak staff, struggled to get up, and walked out of the cave step by step. The tree hole opened on its own, and a staircase dropped down at his feet. Before he could tentatively walk down the first step, the queen quickly came up to her, holding her son's shoulders and looking up and down. "Is this cured? Is this, really cured?" "It's cured, mother. My heart is fine, and my body is fine too." The eldest prince raised his hand and patted his chest, making a muffled sound. "In a while, when my body grows stronger, even these seals can be removed." "Yes, don't worry, your majesty." Elf Legend followed him and walked over, with a relaxed and comfortable smile on his face. "His Royal Highness Anio is completely fine. In his current condition, if he eats well, sleeps well, and practices a lot, I can train him to be a first-level warrior in a month, and to a fifth-level warrior in a year. When the time comes, there will be no problem at all carrying his current mental power." Gretel was at the end. He was already walking slowly and closely to the side. When he heard this sentence, he turned around and took a longer detour. Who would have thought that even after taking a long way around, he couldn't escape and was caught by the Lord of Thunder? Did you hear that? If your body is not strong enough, if your mental strength is too strong, it is easy for problems to occur. Don't think that you don't need to practice once you become a knight. Teacher T. Gretel tilted his head and bared his teeth, as if his ears were being tugged. "I haven't stopped practicing. During this period, I often ran on the training ground. Moreover, my physical body is very strong, indeed very strong. Every time I advance, I will be refined by the world's gifts. Although the physical combat power is lacking, the muscle strength, cardiopulmonary function, exercise reserve, etc. are all on par with nature walkers of the same level. What do you call training? The most you can do is practice transformation. You should still play around with your little silver dragon. You have to practice other things too. When your teacher and I disguised ourselves as swordsmen, we could transform from glory to glory. The holy city goes to the Black Forest." Gretel. "Teacher, you turned out to be such a teacher. You actually have such a brave experience. Teacher, how do you train your strength? Do you use microcurrent to stimulate your muscles?" Roll. Gretel scurried away with his head in his arms. For a moment, he couldn't even care about his precious oak staff, which was still in the hands of the eldest prince. Fortunately, the royal family will not ignore his oak staff. Not only did he not hesitate, but the next day, Prince Anio personally came to visit and sent back his oak staff and an invitation. In half a month, during the Silver Moon Festival, there will be a large-scale celebration on the island. When the time comes, be sure to take the time to attend. The eldest prince was wearing a light short suit, his hair was wet, and his body was steaming with heat. It was obvious that he had just exercised. Seeing Gretel staring at him, he looked down at himself and smiled softly. "During this time, I will be living in the Magic Academy and training with the teenagers. I will slowly polish my body and slowly let it grow until it can carry my mental power. Then you have to be careful and don't exercise too much." Greet couldn't help but warned. He admired the eldest prince's perseverance and character. "It is precisely because of admiration that I worry that he is pushing himself too hard. Excessive exercise will overwhelm the muscles and cause a large number of cells to disintegrate. Cell contents are excreted into the blood and the kidneys cannot filter them, causing hematuria and even kidney failure. Take it step by step and take your time. Don't worry, I won't force myself too much. The elders who keep an eye on me are also very experienced." The eldest prince smiled. "You and the elders have put in so much effort to cure me. I will definitely cherish this body and never hurt my body by training too hastily. There are scientific exercise methods, sufficient and high-quality food, natural nourishment, herbal medicine, and massage. The growth of the eldest prince's physical strength can be described as rapid. When I first walked out of the tree hole, I was still sick and swaying, and I looked like I would fall over when the wind blew. I couldn't even reach the 0 level. The standard for 0 level is actually not strong civilians, but already beginning apprentice. However, on the Silver Moon Festival, when Gretel saw him again, his steps were steady, his muscles were bulging, and his breathing was long. From a distance, Gretel saw him clenching his fist and punching the air. Beside him, an older elf whom Gretel didn't know nodded in approval. Not bad, not bad. Now, the intermediate warrior has already started. Work harder and get to the intermediate level as soon as possible. Once you reach the intermediate level, you can wash away the patterns on your face. No, the eldest prince whispered a word, but Gretel didn't hear it clearly. He didn't know whether it was a name or a title, so he touched his cheek. Is this pattern ugly? Not ugly at all, on the contrary, very beautiful. The older elf smiled and raised his hand, making a faint stroke on his cheek. But it will be better when you can let this body naturally carry your spirit without relying on the seal. Your mother and all of us will also be able to rest assured. At that time, I will. The eldest prince lowered his voice and said something else. It was most likely not a good thing. Greed watched from a distance and saw regret and intolerance on the face of the older elf. The eldest prince himself didn't care much. He raised his head, smiled, and looked around. When he saw Gretel, he immediately said hello to the elder and strode towards Gretel. You are finally here. Today is a day of celebration. You are our honored guest, so you must have a good time. Come, I will take you to mother's place. Gretel smiled, took Sarah's hand, and followed him forward. The Silver Moon Festival is held on the day of the full moon in midsummer every year to honor Lady Silver Moon. It is also the biggest celebration day of the year for the elves. The main venue this time was, as usual, located on the Holy Mountain, in the square in front of the palace. The festival hasn't even started yet, but the square is already bustling with music, flowers, and people celebrating everywhere. Greet saw his classmates who were practicing transfiguration in the Magic Academy, the group of boys and girls, walking along the long table filled with food, each of them eating with their mouths full of oil. He saw Kusa Oak changing out of the brown-gray robe and wearing a brand new turquoise robe, holding flowers in his hands, and walking through the crowd. He saw the elder who was on duty at the top of the teleportation array at the top of the world tree, holding the hand of an old lady with a smile. The red glow on the old lady's face was more moving than the sunset on the horizon. What surprised him the most was that Ashui-san, who usually wore leather armor, carried a long bow, and always looked alert, put on an exquisite robe. The light cyan open-fronted robe has dark purple lace on the cuffs, placket, and hem. The neckline and chest are densely embroidered with magic runes using dark purple silk thread. Every time you move, the magic aura will naturally fill you. The hem of the robe is decorated with snow-white tassels, which come from the long tail of the monster, echoing the long black and white feathers on the shoulder straps. This is a proud achievement for a warrior, but at this time it can only add luster to her appearance. There were huge flowers on her short green hair, which looked like metal in the moonlight. When you got closer, you could smell a faint fragrance. Greed walked a few steps and saw no fewer than 10 male elves, secretly glancing in the direction of Sister Uge. You guys should go up. But rush forward. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1420. Prince Anio followed Gretel's gaze and saw Ashui-san. Contrary to Gretel's expectations, he seemed to know the female warrior. He walked through the crowd and walked directly towards her. Do you know Sister Uge? Greet asked curiously. Prince Anio kept walking. As he walked, he turned his face and smiled at him. Ashui-san, a high-level warrior and a high-level nature walker, has been stationed in the fertile forest for hundreds of years and played an important role in cleaning up the elven secret realm. After returning to Evermeet Island, He participated in the defense of the Great Rift battlefield and made many military exploits. When I was assisting my mother with her work, I paid close attention to her situation. Greed had to be convinced. His Highness, the Great Prince, lies in the seal every day, hidden behind the scenes, and only pays attention to Yongju Island through the interaction of mental power. He can still notice so many details. Princess Norrell was right. Her eldest brother was indeed a more suitable candidate to inherit the throne than her. Sister Uge is really strong. She taught me many things when I was in the fertile forest. Gretel said as he walked forward with the eldest prince. Ashmoonsong also saw them and waved happily to them. Seeing that they were getting closer and closer, Greet suddenly stopped and looked past Ashmoonsong and looked behind her. AI-11 Uge's pointed long ears suddenly stood up, and without looking back, she grabbed it with her backhand. Grab it in your hand, drag it forward, bow your waist, and exert force on your arms, shoulders, waist, and legs together, and you will hear an ouch sound, and the dust will fly. The next moment, not long after he set foot in Legend, Idion, who was dressed cheerfully, was thrown to the ground by a shoulder, and looked at each other with Ashu itch. Ash, even if you don't like me. After a long time, Iudian squirmed twice, arched his back with difficulty, pulled out a bouquet of flowers with dew from under his spine, and slowly raised it. You won't be so cruel, right? Ashmoonsong looked down at Idion. Idion turned his back to the sky, stretched out his arms, and tried his best to push the bouquet of flowers under Ashuisong's nose. You two are looking at me, and I am looking at you. Greet, Prince Anio, Sarara, and a group of onlookers stood nearby, holding their breath, tiptoeing, and looking around. What have you done? After a long time, Ashuedge turned cold and smashed the arm that Idion was holding in her hand to the ground, and raised a cloud of smoke and dust. What did you do when I chased you decades ago? Said you were not in the mood, said you only wanted to practice martial arts, said you only wanted to explore the secret realm of elves? Now you think of me. Get out! Get out! Get out, get out, get out! As he spoke, he was so angry that he kicked his feet up. The toes are straightened, the long legs are shaking like a phantom. I kick, I kick, I kick, kick, kick. Udion didn't get up, and he was actually performing 18 rolls on the ground, left and right, forward and back. It's not like Ashuedge couldn't kick it, let's just say it was kicking, and it was obvious that only a little bit of her toe was touched. However, no matter how hard he rolled, the bouquet of flowers was always held high, trying hard to hold it in front of AI-11 Uge. As for this bouquet of flowers, how come it was thrown over the shoulder and rolled over in a series without even a single petal falling off? Then maybe we can only say that maybe, probably, the legendary skills are just that strong. There were cheers, whistles, and applause all around. Ashuedge's cheeks became redder and redder, and her pointed ears trembled more and more violently. She suddenly turned around and pounced, turning into a black panther on the spot and running away. Hey! Stop it! Idion screamed. He turned over and turned into a huge golden leopard, running at lightning speed, and chased after him. The bouquet of delicate flowers was still in his mouth, drifting away, drifting away. Greet could barely hold back the smile on her face. Beside him, Sarara covered her mouth with her hands, laughing so hard that half of her body rested on his shoulders. After laughing for a while, he took out a hand to pinch his ear. You can't be like this, do you hear me? I heard it. I definitely heard it. Greet stood up straight, not daring to move at all, trying to make Miss Sarala lean against her more comfortably. Don't worry, I will never do this. I have always liked Sarara. Always liked her. Prince Anio waited patiently beside him. He waited until Ashuisong and Idion ran away after each other until they were completely out of sight, and Gretel also rescued ear from Sarala. Let them continue to move forward. Passing through the crowd, walking up the stairs turned into giant tree trunks, turning a few turns, and finally arrived at the high platform where the queen was. There was already a row of elves standing on the inner edge of the high platform. Gretel took a quick glance. The two princesses are here, the little prince is here, and even the teacher and senior brother Baebo are here. There are also Grand Elder Ahmad, Elder Fahim, and several elders who have dealt with them. Seeing them coming up, everyone turned to look at them. With that posture, it seemed that only a few of them were waiting. I didn't mean to waste time. He held Sarah's hand and stood directly at the end of the line without speaking, moving, or even looking aside. Is the teacher glaring at him? Is the senior brother winking at him? I don't know, I didn't see it. Fortunately, after them, several elves came up on the high platform one after another, so Gretel did not become the last one. The silver moon moved minute by minute, until it moved out of the treetops and the moonlight filled the entire square. The queen finally stepped forward slowly and gracefully raised a hand. The fingertips draw in, close, and spread out, crossing in front of the body and drawing a graceful curve. At the same time, the ethereal music came from nowhere, faint and soft, echoing throughout the entire venue. Before I knew it, everything from the high platform to the square was completely silent. Gretel subconsciously squeezed Cyrilla's hand, forgetting how to breathe. The silver moonlight shrouded the queen like gauze and mist, dancing with her. Gretel has no idea what her dancing posture, body shape, and appearance are like. There is only one simple thought left in her mind. Beautiful. What a beauty. Every move of the hand, every move, every bend, every turn, are all extremely beautiful. The moonlight flowed on her fingertips, rotating with her skirt, and swaying to the surroundings with every movement she made, and to everyone on and off the stage. It falls on the cheeks and between the eyebrows, and it feels cool and cold, making people feel comfortable, and their mental strength seems to have slightly increased. It's dance, it's music, it's magic. The earliest songs and dances, in addition to entertaining others and themselves, were originally intended to entertain the gods. The Queen of the Elves was originally the highest priest of Lady Silvermoon. At this time, on the high platform, under the moonlight, she stretched her arms and danced gracefully, as if all the moonlight under the night sky was concentrated on her. It is also like Lady Silvermoon was disturbed by this dance and looked down at the earth from the sky. Under the guidance of the priest, she blessed all her people. On the high platform, there seemed to be only a silhouette, and it seemed that wisps of moonlight were dancing, singing in harmony with the voices of heaven and earth. She is so amazing. Sirara moved closer to him and whispered. The queen herself has the strength of the legendary level. When she exerts all her strength on the high platform of the palace and in front of the world tree, the divine power she arouses is more than the primary level of the legendary level. The silver dragon girl stood near her, and the powerful spiritual power that hid her face made her breathless. Prince Anio looked left and right, his eyes full of worry. The two sisters, one playing the flute, the other playing the harp, and the younger brother concentrating on playing the balalaika, are already doing their best to help their mother perform the sacrifice. And he himself, who has legendary level of mental power, was strictly prohibited from taking action today. The power of today's song, dance, and sacrifice was several times greater than usual. In contrast, how much price did the mother and siblings have to pay for this? When the song ends, the silver moon reaches the zenith. The audience was completely silent, and even the roars of birds and beasts disappeared. It was as if all the creatures in the world were immersed in the grace of Lady Silvermoon. After a long, long time, the audience woke up like a dream, and wave after wave of cheers rang out. MS Silvermoon! MS Silvermoon! Thank you MS Silvermoon for your grace. Long live the Queen! 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 Her Majesty the Queen stood calmly on the spot, looking at the audience with a smile, accepting the cheers of her people. After a while, he raised a hand and waved downward gently. In the past year, we have gone through many difficult days and achieved quite a lot. We won the key battle of the Great Rift and achieved 100 years of tranquility. We have safely restarted the Well of Eternity. From now on, we no longer have to endure the pain of World Tree and Ancient Tree to channel the injured Well of Eternity every day. We have further restored the Secret Realm and are one step closer to returning to the Great Forest. She talked eloquently, and with every word she said, there was a burst of cheers from below. After talking about recent major events, he changed the topic and his tone became gentler. Besides this, I have several private happy events that I would like to share with you. The first is that my eldest son Anio finally got rid of the devil's curse and regained health. She waved back, and the eldest prince came up and stood next to her mother. The queen took his shoulders and pushed him forward. Under the moonlight, the lines on the eldest prince's cheeks disappeared one by one, and powerful spiritual power spread, stirring in the square and surrounding every audience. Anio has had a very difficult time growing up since he was born. He has been sleeping in the seal for a long time, studying and researching in the Emerald Dream. Last year, he briefly replaced me and took over the control of the Mystic Lock. Thin gasping sounds came and went. Some of the people below know the situation of the eldest prince, and some do not even know that there is such a person as the eldest prince. Even those who knew the situation of the eldest prince did not fully understand his power and achievements. So, we have another legend on Everlasting Island. The queen spoke slowly, and everyone below held their breath to listen. After talking about the eldest prince's achievements, he turned around halfway and stretched out a hand to the people behind him. Anio is able to recover, thanks to Elder Amat, Elder Gurit, etc., who have maintained his physical condition for a long time. I would also like to thank Master Nordmark for proposing a brand new treatment plan and joining forces with the elders and legendary mages in Nevis to finally put this treatment plan into practice. Master Nordmark, please come forward and receive a mother's thanks. Gretel, me. Now. Does it have to be in public? Before he could think about it, his body had already rushed forward and he staggered out 2 steps. Behind him, Sirara's voice was thin and she sounded very proud. Let's go dash. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1421. Gretel could only be thankful that the area of the high platform was relatively large. His staggering steps should not be visible from the perspective of the audience. Moreover, Cyrilla is much gentler than before. With this push out, he only staggered 2 steps before he could barely stand still, or in other words, barely maintain a normal walking posture, and walk towards the queen. A year ago, he probably wouldn't have staggered out for more than 5 steps. But when they first met, Sirara pushed him and he could fly from one side of the high platform to the bottom of the other side of the high platform. While Greet was rejoicing, he bent his knees slightly, lowered his waist slightly, and pressed his heels hard against the ground. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, digest the momentum, stand up straight again, and walk slowly towards the queen. Mage Nordmark, we have a lot of thanks to you. Before he could say anything, the queen bowed slightly and spoke first. As queen, I want to thank you for finding a way to extinguish the flames of the secret realm. You have created all kinds of wonderful healing spells, saved the warriors sealed in the ancient trees, repaired their illnesses, and quickly replenished the blood of the injured warriors. As a mother, I want to thank you even more for saving my son against all odds. You removed the curse of the Demon King from his body, repaired his damaged heart, and allowed him to grow up normally like a healthy child. Following her voice, the silver moonlight shining on the square gathered again and draped over the queen. The light mist became thicker and thicker, and the light beam became more and more solid. Finally, it formed a small full moon in front of her smooth forehead. Mage Nordmark, the queen raised her hands, holding the full moon, and gently held it in her palms. Step forward, move your hands to Greet's head, quietly separate them, and press down. Please accept the gratitude of a queen and a mother. May the light of the silver moon always surround you. May you never be confused, never fear, and always find the direction of home under the silver moon. Shining and moist, soaked in coolness, a full moon fell quietly. It illuminated Greet's eyes, then disappeared into his forehead. There was a gentle noise from the audience, like ripples passing over the lake, or like a gentle breeze blowing through the treetops. Obviously, the Queen's silver moon blessing carries a lot of weight. If the Queen had not declared his achievements before, I am afraid that the people below would not only be surprised, but some would also speak out against it. Greet didn't know the weight of the silver moon's blessing. He only knew that it should act on his mental power. As for the specific effect, Gretel couldn't tell. He probably had to wait until he went back and found a quiet place to meditate. At this moment, his instinctive reaction was, "Don't put a moon on my forehead, right? Mr. Bao has a crescent moon on his forehead, which is no longer something ordinary people can hold. If you put a full moon on my forehead, my appearance will be ruined, ruined." He resisted the urge to reach out and touch it immediately, or summon a water mirror to look at it, and bowed gracefully to express his gratitude to the Queen. Using the amplification technique that had not dissipated, he solemnly said, "I have the blood of the elves, and I regard the elves as my teachers, relatives, and close friends. It is natural to do something for my teachers, relatives, and friends." Yes, after hearing Greet's answer, the Queen was slightly disappointed, but she also responded with a calm smile. "I am very happy that my family has gained another relative and close friend. Of course, there is also good news, which also brings me great joy. She turned to face the audience, then half turned in the other direction. Taking this opportunity, Greet quickly dragged her heels on the floor, rubbing, away from the Queen. "My eldest daughter Norel has finally found her love," the Queen's voice rang out again, loudly resounding throughout the square. "Today, on the Silver Moon Festival, under the watchful eyes of Lady Silver Moon, she will enter into a marriage contract with the human spellcaster from Nevis, the legendary third level, Lord of Thunder, His Excellency Christian Descartes." What? What? Greet was shocked and quickly turned to look at the teacher and then at the senior brother. "Is the teacher done? The teacher is getting married, no, engaged. When did this happen? How come I don't know anything? Apparently half a month ago, when the eldest prince was being treated, they still looked distant, and I didn't even see them say a word. The Lord of Thunder didn't even look at him, took Princess Norel's hand and walked forward slowly." On the other side of the team, senior brother Baebo gave him a fierce look. "You know? What do you know? You didn't even ask, you didn't even care. In the past half-month, except when the teacher summoned you to check your homework, have you ever gone to the teacher once? No, you don't know anything, you only know how to soak in your lab." Greet lowered his head, retreated to his original position, and stood side by side with Cyrilla. Watching the teacher holding the princess's hand, standing next to the Queen, watching the Queen introduce them to the tribe. This Lord of Thunder studied on Yangju Island 100 years ago. You may still remember him. A sentence that seemed like a casual conversation aroused gentle laughter in the audience. Obviously, among the crowd present, there were many researchers from the Magic Academy and students who had studied in the Magic Academy, who had witnessed the growth process of the Lord of Thunder and the long love affair with the princess. Now that I think about it, many people still find this pairing of a young man who is addicted to magic and has no time to think about anything else, and a girl who is full of love, interesting. A smile also appeared on the queen's face. She felt distressed that her daughter fell into a hopeless love, but there was nothing she could do to stop it. Fortunately, Ms. Silvermoon protected her and her daughter's love affair finally came to fruition. Even if she might leave Yangju Island in the future, leaving her and her people, she could only smile and send her blessings. The queen paused briefly and continued. As time goes by, fate goes round and round, and the lovers finally come together again. May Ms. Silvermoon bless them, may nature bless them, and may their love be as evergreen as the world tree. Under the high stage, there was laughter, applause, and cheers. Greet tried hard to prick up his ears, but luckily he didn't hear much whistling. It was probably because the elves were somewhat reserved about the unfamiliar human legend. Imagine a group of elves whistling at the teacher, and Gretel seemed to see thunder falling from the sky like rain. Fortunately, it is right to be more reserved. The queen also smiled and clapped along with the clan members. While applauding, she looked at her eldest daughter and the man she liked with joy in her eyes. Princess Norel's cheeks were rosy and her eyes were watery. She leaned against the Lord of Thunder and raised her head from time to look at her mother. But the Lord of Thunder just stood quietly, smiling slightly, looking down at the audience, holding the princess's hand and not letting go from the beginning to the end. Behind them, Greet and senior brother Birbo looked at each other, then looked at each other, and then looked at each other again. Alas, the old house is on fire. Alas, let it be whatever the teacher likes. Anyway, it seems now that the princess is more nervous about the teacher. The teacher probably won't stay on Yangju Island forever, probably. The queen looked at them with a smile, unaware of the winks, coughs, and various winks behind her. After waiting for a while, he stretched out his hands, pressed down lightly, and continued to speak. His Excellency, the Lord of Thunder, came to Eternal Meeting Island again and played a great role in the process of restarting the Well of Eternity and in the process of treating Anio. After advancing to the third level of the legend, he guided a huge amount of energy into the Great Rift, driving the demon land back hundreds of miles and creating peace for us. In the future, he will continue to participate in the work of eradicating the demon land. Gretel. Teacher, do you really want to do this job? Teacher. How many years will you stay on Evermeet Island? Are you not going back to Nevis? Gretel looked at the Lord of Thunder in horror. The teacher is married. No, married. What should I do? Do you want to stay with the elves? With such a tangled mood, Gretel watched the entire engagement ceremony. The elves attach more importance to the engagement ceremony than to the marriage. An engagement is a lifelong commitment made by both parties under the gaze of God, while a marriage is just a private matter between two people and two families. After the engagement was completed, the Silver Moon Festival completely entered the stage of celebration. Music, singing and dancing were everywhere in the square, and elves who did not know each other looked at each other and held hands to dance. Gretel, however, was pregnant with evil intentions, and went around and around with Sarah, with no intention of joining the celebration. Arriving at a secluded forest glade, Cyrilla couldn't wait to ask. What's that moon for? Yeah, what's the use? Senior brother Baebo came out of nowhere and asked. Greet sat down against the tree trunk, closed his eyes and meditated, and finally answered after a while. It's equivalent to a permanent mental blessing. Immune to many negative mental spells, the legendary primary level can resist, immune to chaos, immune to fear, etc. and, under the silver moon, immune to most troubled by illusions. He said something, and Baebo nodded, said something, and nodded again. When Greet finished his report, he breathed a sigh of relief with a smile on his face. They are all very useful protective spells. Especially when you go out and take risks, they can reduce a lot of dangers. This queen is really generous to you. It's not like I'm going to take any risks. Greet pursed her lips and decided to skip the topic. He looked back in the direction of the high platform and asked in a low voice. Elder brother, what are your plans next? Teacher, are you going to stay here? What about you? Teacher may stay for a while. At least, the matter of this big rift will be arranged. Birbo leaned forward and lowered his voice. You don't understand until legend. Handling this matter well will be of great benefit to the teacher in the future. As for me, I will go to the secret realm to help the elves get another well of eternity, and then come back and take over here. By the way, don't just talk about me, what are your next plans? It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1422. I will probably stay for a while longer. Greet replied hesitantly. Archmage Hines refused to leave when he arrived at Evermeet Island, and kept saying that he wanted to teach him the clone technique, even if he was shown it first. The research on chromosomes is getting better and better, and attempts are being made to replace gene editing technology with limited wishing to study the role of each chromosome. He has also studied and understood a lot of 7-ring spells, especially the commonly used 7-ring spells. At least when the teacher checked his homework, he no longer saw that his nose was not a nose and his eyes were not eyes. Hey! Hey! Beside him, Cyrilla was already impatient and pulled his arm hard. Greet looked back at her and smiled reassuringly. I plan to go to Dragon Island with her later. Of course, I have to wait until I advance to level up. If I'm not level 15, I won't have the confidence to go to Dragon Island. Under the moonlight, senior brother Baebo showed a playful smile. Going to Dragon Island? Going to see Cyrilla's parents? Do you want me to accompany you? Or the teacher to accompany you? Do you have money on hand? Do you have enough gold, silver, and jewelry? Marrying a silver dragon is very expensive, yes. Do you want me to polish some more diamonds for you? Sapphires and emeralds are also fine. Now there are mature solutions. If I get a little familiar with them, I can help you if I have the materials. Eldest brother, before Gretel could speak, Cyrilla shouted out first. He clenched his fists, stamped his feet, and with a loud bang, the nearby trees swayed. It's not what you said. The dragon clan values treasure, but not so much that they can't live without it. Besides, when dragons choose a partner, they mainly look at their character. Gretel is so good. Among the dragon clan, he can be considered a genius. Okay, this is not necessary, it is not necessary. The hero did not suffer the immediate disadvantage, and was penetrated by an adult silver dragon at close range. Even if he was a legend, it was inevitable that something would happen to him. Baebo immediately raised his hands in the air to express surrender. It's just a heartfelt message. Show it to your parents, brothers, sisters, and relatives and friends. Greet is also very sincere and treats you very well, right? Let them see that when you are with him, nothing will be missing, and your parents will feel relieved, right? That's for sure. Cyrilla raised her chin high and hugged Gretel's arm proudly. Gretel treats me the best. Little dragons of the same age as me, even those who are 500 years older than me, don't have as much savings as I do. No gold coins or jewelry. Big bucks for Eagle Nation. Big income for Kingdom of the Sun. Gold coins, pearls, gems refined by the earth element, gems manually created by elves. Of course, the most important thing is the bed that Gretel gave her. Even though it's a silver coin bed, not a gold coin bed, it's still very, very good. Who among Xiaolongs of the same age as her has such a big bed? The gold and silver coins saved up are gathered into a pile. It would be great to make a pillow. Yes, Greet is very good to you, very good, very good. The smile on Baebo's face grew bigger and bigger. Gretel's scalp was numb and he immediately changed the topic. Elder brother, the teacher married the elf princess. If you help them build another well of eternity, does that mean we have formed an alliance with the elves? That. Alliance. Strategic cooperation? Strategic partners? Comprehensive strategic partner? What benefits do the elves give us? Can there be a few more legendaries to help with defense? Can a few more legends join the battle when the glorious Holy See launches a massive attack? Can it support a batch of strategic supplies, or a batch of important magic materials, or open up the elven secret realm so that we can go in and mine at will? Or maybe we can exchange a batch of spell books and exchange students. Although the books that the teacher read on Yangju Island must have been shared in the council, sharing on a large scale and sharing on a small scale are definitely not the same. These are things that legends consider, so you don't need to ask any more. To his surprise, senior brother Burbo simply rejected him. You have already done a lot, and there is no need to do anything more. In short, whether it is your benefit, the council, or the elves will definitely not miss you. Why? Don't think so much at such a young age. Go have fun. Go sing and dance. It's a rare celebration, so be happy. Go. Go. As he spoke, he waved to drive them away. Greet felt a great force pushing and driving him out. Gretel couldn't struggle, so he had to turn his head and shout as hard as he walked. Eldest brother, you should go play too. There are so many people here. So many beautiful girls, ah. He was pushed, staggering, and moved outside the forest. In the quiet forest glade, only his unwilling voice echoed. Sister, 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 ah. Little thing Baebo shook his head and chuckled. There are quite a lot of beautiful girls in the elves, but he really has no intention of falling in love here and hooking up with a girl back home. When it comes to marrying an elf, having a teacher is enough. The relationship between the Parliament and the elves is best kept apart as it is now. If the relationship is too close, it is unnecessary. He also wants to finish harvesting the elves' wool and return to Nevis as soon as possible. If the teacher doesn't go back, there must be someone in charge of Thunderhorn no matter what. No matter how happy the Silver Moon Festival celebration is, it must come to an end. Gretel didn't even wait until the celebration was over, and went back to meditate and sleep step by step. The next morning, I got up on time, went to the empty martial arts field, transformed into a wolf, a leopard, and a bear, and consciously ran circles. Run. Run. The activities have started and my mind is awake. The important thing is that Cyrilla also wakes up, turns into a silver dragon again, and goes to the sky to fly with Cyrilla. After training in the silver dragon form, she took a shower and ate. Cyrilla ate 4 large plates, and Greet cut some off the edges on her plate. Just after he stuffed it in, there was a bang, and a huge crowd of people sat down next to him. Bernard. Greet tilted his head and spoke vaguely. Speaking of which, since arriving at Evermeet Island, he hasn't had a good conversation with Bernard for a long time. He was immersed in the laboratory, busy doing research, and doing various studies. Bernard was busy rushing, and training himself on the battlefield of the Great Rift. Occasionally, when he is free, the barbarians are near the battlefield, fighting with other warriors, constantly honing their skills, or accepting guidance from Midian. Protect him. Give him a hand. Evermeet Island is very safe for Gretel, and there is no place that needs protection. As for attacking, Gretel has a large group of elves to help him. One more person is not too much, and one person less than him is not a lot. From the time he took root on Evermeet Island, to the time he advanced to the great battlefield and killed the Demon King, Bernard's fighting never stopped. What Gretel can do for him is to beg the elves to equip him with armor, equip him with weapons, and watch him more on the battlefield so as not to let him die. Go berserk, fight, get injured, and recover, go berserk again, fight again, get injured again, and recover again. High-intensity battles day after day, pushing oneself to the limit every day, and going back and forth between life and death every day. All Greet knew was that some time ago, Bernard had advanced again and reached the 13th level. For this barbarian warrior who came out of the wilderness and was not an amazingly talented man, this was already an achievement that he had tried his best and even overstretched himself. Bernard nodded to him and buried himself in his meal. However, the barbarians did not eat like usual, but took one bite, paused for a while, took another bite, paused for a while, and sometimes even forgot to chew. In the eyes of Greet, who was familiar with him, if this guy wasn't worried, he must be suffering from various symptoms such as stomach pain, bloating, esophageal obstruction, or at least angina. He didn't ask, he just waited patiently while eating. Seeing that he had already eaten half of his meal, the barbarian suddenly seemed to have made up his mind and stuffed the food down in 2 mouthfuls. Just at the moment he finished eating, he wiped his mouth and blocked it in front of him. Boss, the barbarian's dark brown hair stood up one by one, and his eyes were as wide as bells, exuding a sense of bluff. I don't want to accompany you to Dragon Island anymore. Greet's face slowly turned serious. He nodded to Cyrilla, threw a cleansing spell on his face, and walked out with Bernard. He walked around the crowd, found a quiet place, sat down face to face at the stone table under the tree, and said slowly, "Bernard, what's wrong? I don't want to accompany you to Dragon Island anymore." After this journey, Bernard had already made mental preparations. When he spoke now, he was no longer as stiff as before, but he still had the smell of a broken jar. "Boss, I'm not as strong as you, and you advance so quickly. I tried my best to advance to level 13, but you are about to reach level 15. He lowered his head sadly, and his huge fist dropped to his side, pinching until the veins popped. "I'm of no use to you anymore, the dragon clan is so strong. If I follow you, I'm just a burden. Boss, please talk to them and find an opportunity to send me back. When I return to Nevis, I'll still be there. I can look after the hospital for you." Greet's brows tightened. From Nevis to the Great Wilderness, from the northern part of the New World to the southern part of the New World, and from the Kingdom of the Sun to the Evermeet Island, he saw every bit of Bernard's efforts. Seeing him stumble, seeing him bruised, seeing him bleeding and sweating. There are some things he can't help with, and there are some things he wants to help with. However, the barbarian is stubborn, even more stubborn than him. "Bernard, don't worry." Now that the matter was over, he could only use the softest tone to try to appease his loyal guard. "I've been keeping an eye on your situation. Don't make a decision in a hurry. Let me think about how I can help you. It's the end of the month. It seems that there is a monthly ticket sprint in the last 3 days of this month. Please save your monthly tickets and vote for cats when the event starts tomorrow. Thanks. Please call me William. Thank you for the 500 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right?" Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1423. With Bernard's situation, it is very, very rare to advance to a high-level warrior, or what you call level 13. At noon that day, Udian sat in front of Gretel and answered very seriously. Gretel listened attentively, listening to this legendary warrior analyze Bernard's advancement process from various aspects such as innate qualifications, nurture, combat skills, acumen, and reactions. After the analysis, I concluded. He said he couldn't make it, and in my opinion, that's true. From the fertile forest to here, and advancing twice in a row in such a short period of time, he has already squeezed himself too much. In the near future, it is best to rest and recuperate for a period of time, not to participate in combat, or even to have too intense training. Otherwise, it is very easy to cause irreparable accidents. Greet let out a long sigh. He had actually been mentally prepared for this situation, but he still hoped for a miracle. After thinking for a while, he said softly. Isn't it okay to rely on external help? I have 3 shares of legendary resources on Everlasting Island. I can propose one and use it on Bernard, isn't this okay? His eyes were too persistent and his tone was too serious. Even though Idian had seen how he used a legendary level magic crystal on Appa without hesitation, he was shocked at this time and then slowly answered. This may be a little helpful. For example, the well water of the Well of Eternity, is absorbed by the World Tree from the Well of Eternity and filters the condensed sap. One copy can elevate a high-level warrior to a half-step legend. Gretel's eyes lit up. Udian proposed this plan to him. It seems that the success rate is not small, and the risk should not be too great. However, his reason still allowed him to resist the urge to blurt out okay and instead asked. So, what's the price? The price, there are 2 main points. Idian nodded secretly in his heart, feeling deeply relieved that Gretel was not dazzled by the good news. Well, protecting him for 100 years seems to be very worthwhile. First, using this method is risky after all. Even elves who have been infiltrated by the power of nature for a long time have a 30% chance of failure, and the consequences of failure range from minor injuries to death. Bernard is a savage, not an elf, has a different advancement path, and is not a child favored by nature. If he advances in this way, the success rate will be lower and more dangerous. What about the second one? Second, if you advance in this way, although you can become a half-step legend, you will never be able to become a legend, Udian solemnly said. So historically, Yangju Island would only use this well water to mass-produce high-level warriors when it faced a major crisis. What's more, they are provided to legendary spellcasters, giving them strong bodies and stronger abilities to face risks. Of course, a large part of the legendary spellcasters of the elves follow the natural walker route. They are skilled in both combat and spellcasting. This is not a rare thing at all. Only those who are really partial to science, such as Elder Harold who specializes in prophecy, would need to drink well water to make up for his damaged physique. The light in Greet's eyes disappeared. He lowered his head and thought for a while, then sighed softly. Thank you. If this is the only way, I will have a good talk with Bernard and listen to his choice. Is there any other way? If there is anything else, it can only rely on luck. Udian thought for a while. For example, there are warriors with ordinary qualifications who enter a certain secret realm and soar into the sky. When they come out, there are also warriors who go to distant places and come back already advanced to legend. By the way, there is also Dragon Island. Dragon Island. Gretel's breath tightened and he subconsciously leaned forward. Udian tried to remember and relate intermittently. There should be opportunities on Dragon Island. My grandfather, yes, it was my grandfather who told me that one of his seniors went to Dragon Island and made a contract with a dragon. When I went out, I had just entered the high level. When I came back, I was already a legend. However, he did not live on Yangju Island for many years, and then he went to Long Island and never came back. So, there is something, but the specific situation is hard to say. Where the opportunity lies, what price to pay, and what the success rate is, the details are unknown. However, where there is news, there is direction. Gretel solemnly thanked Idian and asked Cyrilla again. Cyrilla frowned and rolled around for a while, and finally pulled out some remnants from her memory. It seems like this happened. The elf seemed to have entered the dragon's tomb first and ate dragon bone grass or dragon's breath grass or something. Anyway, the matter was quite complicated, and later he married a certain dragon. Anyway, this is indeed a way. You can definitely get dragon breath grass. Just don't mention bathing in dragon's blood, it's all nonsense. Nonsense. With dragon tombs and dragon bone grass, Greed might be able to think of a way, but he really couldn't help with the matter of marrying a dragon. Looking at the appearance of the barbarian, it doesn't look like he could attract the attention of a dragon. However, at least on Dragon Island, there are still quite a few opportunities. There are high-level resources and high-level warriors for training. A level 13 warrior, not to mention sparring with a young dragon, can at least wrestle with a giant. He sorted out the news and went to talk to Bernard. Bernard was very frustrated at first and insisted on returning to Nevis. Gretel solemnly said, "Bernard, you have followed me since I was a little priest and only at level 1. At that time, you didn't despise me for being weak or clumsy. When facing the enemy, you tried your best to stand in front of me. Over the years, you have followed me across oceans and continents without complaining, no matter how hard or dangerous it was. Today, how could I despise you and leave you behind just because you are not strong enough?" "But the boss." Bernard tried to argue. Greet raised a palm to stop him from speaking, and said slowly, "Now there are two opportunities for you to follow my footsteps. One is to drink the water from the well of eternity." He carefully stated the feasibility, dangers, and effects of the two options. Finally concluded, "From my point of view, I hope you choose the Dragon Island plan. This plan is safer, has a higher limit, and will not hinder your development. If you choose the well water from the well of eternity. Bernard, I don't want you to be stuck in the half-step legend in the future, unable to overcome this obstacle when you are old, and regret it for the rest of your life." Halfway through stating the plan, the barbarian's eyes were already bright, his chest was heaving, and his breathing was rapid. After Gretel finished speaking, Bernard couldn't wait to answer. "I choose the well of eternity, boss." "You will regret this." "I will regret it if I don't choose." "Boss, if you drink the water from the well of eternity, I can become a half-legend. I can also protect you on Dragon Island and be useful to you. Otherwise, if I go to Dragon Island with you, besides eating from you, drinking from you, and relying on your resources to slowly advance, what else can I do for you?" Greet frowned. He tried to persuade him several times, but the more he tried to persuade him, the more determined Bernard became. "Either let me drink the water from the well of eternity and continue to protect you. Or, boss, just find an opportunity and let me follow Archmage Haynes, or anyone else, back to Nevis. If the barbarian becomes stubborn, even 9 oxen will not be able to pull him back." Greet couldn't persuade him, so he could only sigh deeply. "Then you have to wait a little longer. I have to inquire and study more about how the well water works. Anyway, the resources are in my hands. If I don't open my mouth to exchange it, no one can get it. Either listen to me honestly and drink when I give it to you, or, just go ahead and catch me blind." He was stuck on the resource end, and Bernard had no other choice but to let Greet inquire. Gretel first ran to the Magic Academy to ask about the price of the well of eternity water. "This is still very precious. Of course, it is not unbearable for you. It is about 1/10 of a legendary resource." The elder in charge of the supplies readily gave the price and warned earnestly, "Do you want to use it yourself? It's best not to. Although you are taking the path of a spellcaster, there are still obstacles to breaking through after your body's strength is locked. The best is to enter. I will use the legendary level in the future. I am exchanging it for the warrior followers around me. By the way, can I see the past usage records? Are there any records of the previous user's physical conditions before and after use?" "Of course this exists." The elder pointed out the direction, and Gretel walked into the library with ease. Warriors who are qualified to use the water from the well of eternity are all precious among the elves. Each one has detailed usage records, including records of changes in physical condition and treatment during use. Muscle tears, healing, tears, healing, ligament tears and healing, bones, cardiorespiratory function, other. Just from these records of tearing and healing, we can see how dangerous taking well water can be. It uses repeated destruction and healing methods to strengthen bones and muscles and improve the user's physical fitness almost in a very short period of time. During this process, the powerful energy of the well water is relied upon to support each healing process and maintain vital signs at normal positions. Because the well water contains a strong natural aura, the elves who have been immersed in the power of nature for a long time have a higher degree of response to the well water and a higher energy utilization rate. This won't work, this will definitely not work. Greed frowned and murmured. I have to think of a way to use the well water in a safer and gentler way. Also, the upper limit of advancement is locked. Why, if we don't crack its secret, we must not give it to Bernard. The monthly ticket sprint has been delayed, forget it. No wait, the cat has a showdown. The cat wants a monthly pass. Stretch out your claws and ask for a monthly pass. Please work hard to save expired monthly passes. The rescue method, move your little finger and vote for the cat. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1424. If you want to study the issue of the Well of Eternity's water, one experimental material is obviously not enough. And if you want to redeem multiple shares, it's not just empty talk, you can use your own share to withdraw. Even on Yangju Island, the quantity of such important strategic materials is limited. It is used to cultivate half-step legends, and not everyone can get it. It is used to conduct experiments, feed one to people, and then feed one to pigs. Even if Gretel's reputation on Evermeet Island has almost reached the level of adoration, he still needs a valid reason to get these precious potions. Gretel buried himself in the library and roughly browsed through the available information. Then he sorted out his thoughts and started writing a project application report. First, of course, for experimental purposes. Development of sustained release formulations of Well of Eternity water, as well as research on methods for safe utilization and reducing sequelae. I stopped writing here and read the title carefully 3 times before starting to write the specific content. After brushing, I wrote 3 large pieces of paper in one breath. I finally felt that I had written down all the ideas clearly. I copied it and took it to the elder in charge of exchange. I need to exchange some well water from the Well of Eternity. It's been prepared for you. The elder guarding the material warehouse had a round face and a friendly smile. Hearing this, he took out a half-foot square box from the drawer and pushed it towards Greet. I'm still wondering why you delayed it until now to redeem it. Come on, just sign here and leave the spell mark. How many servings are there? 1 portion. The elder looked up at him with a rather strange look in his eyes. Is 1 portion enough? Master Nordmark, although your follower is a barbarian and tall and burly, after all, he is only a high-level junior. 1 portion is enough. Any more will do him no good and will only increase the risk of accidents. Actually I want 10 copies. 10 portions. Master Nordmark, please think about it. 10 portions of well water is an entire legendary resource. The elder's voice was half stern, half regretful, and full of sincere persuasion. He was going to continue talking, but Greet had already held the manuscript paper in both hands and respectfully sent it to the elder. Elder, I am not here to increase the strength of my followers, but for experiments. Take a look at my experimental plan. 10 portions are already the minimum quantity required for the first phase of the experiment. 10, this thing, World Tree can't produce 1 in a year. The elder grumbled and turned over Greet's manuscript paper. His eyes passed over the first line, and he immediately stopped, then carefully looked down line by line. First of all, of course, it summarizes the working principle of well water and points out that this way of working is very harmful to the human body. Secondly, explore whether an appropriate dose can be calculated based on the weight, grade, physical constitution, and other factors of the person taking the medicine to avoid excessive drug impact on the body. Thirdly, explore the minimum dosage of well water, whether it can be taken in small amounts multiple times and diluted to minimize the negative impact on the human body. Next, try to study the effect of well water on chromosomes, compare the chromosome points before and after taking it, and see whether the chromosome bands are disordered due to taking it, interrupting the potential for advancement. Based on these conjectures, Gretel also designed a series of animal experiments, and human experiments. In fact, all the water from the Shifen Well of Eternity in the first phase was used for animal experiments. To this end, we also need to try to recruit a group of animals that have reached high levels, weigh about the same as elven warriors, and are as similar in type to elves as possible. Birds don't want it, snakes don't want it. It would be best if there are monkeys. If there are no monkeys, pigs, wolves, deer, etc., just barely. The elder read the application from beginning to end, turned it over, read it a second time, and then read it a third time. Finally, he let out a long sigh. You, forget it, come with me and go find the great elder. As he spoke, he raised his hand and pressed it weakly on the end of the long desk. In the flower pot on the desk, a crystal flower suddenly lit up. The elder said a few words to the crystal flower, and then patted the long case hard. Rumble, 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 the whole inner room was filled with the sound of heavy objects moving and closing. The elder took Gretel out of the small house. The door closed automatically, the walls closed, and even the entrance disappeared, turning into a large smooth and hard stone. Greet guessed that the place where the elder was located was probably the entrance to the entire material library. With this press of his button, from the entrance to the inner room, each warehouse and each entrance, the doors were probably closed. Hey, this magic is really convenient. No, maybe his press was just a trigger, activating the entire magic circle. Or maybe, this secret vault was a magic plant that automatically closed the door after being notified. Ancient trees are so convenient, it would be great if they could be automatically sorted, packed, and delivered, with space storage capabilities, so they could be transported directly. With such emotion, Gretel followed the elder all the way to the great elder Amat. The great elder got the news through the crystal flower, smiled and asked them to sit down, and by the way, he touched out a plate of fruit from nowhere. Greet, you haven't been to my place for a long time. Do you have a new research idea? Eat, and say, well, you eat first, and I will take a look at the report. He looked more carefully than the elder in charge of material exchange. After reading it once and again, he tapped his fingers on the table with some age spots and said slowly, Greet, the question you raised is something that elders of all generations have paid close attention to and studied hard. Since you want to start research, have you read all the previous research materials? What I saw before were records of previous generations of soldiers taking well water, Greet admitted honestly. I have seen some previous research materials, but they are not detailed. Maybe they are not in the library I searched for. Indeed, he's not here. Elder Amat nodded with a smile. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand, and a leaf came through the window and fell into his hand. The elder tapped the leaves, and a line of golden text appeared on the leaves. You go to the town of Dahara, this town is on the other side of the lake, you immerse yourself in the laboratory, and you probably haven't visited every town in the Magic Academy, there is a database that stores ancient documents. Take this leaf and the Watcher will show you the way. Come back after reading the previous records. By the way, I have approved this application for you. You can start the project and ask your assistant to check it for you first. Even without the guidance of the Great Elder, Greet would still ask him for information. When starting any research, it is standard procedure to check the information first. But with the approval from the Great Elder, Greet could confidently arrange for a research team headed by Kusa Oak to bring back all the previous research materials. Search, read, write abstracts, organize, arrange in chronological order, mark which researcher, what time period, what progress has been made. After this research, it was discovered that there were more than 30 or 40 elven legends who invested their energy in this project, and more than a few hundred copies of well water were burned. Taking water from the well of eternity has a low success rate and will lock the upper limit. It is really an eternal pain for the elves. Legends come one after another, everyone trying to break through its limitations. In the research data, Gretel even saw the research records of the elves in the New World era and even in the Old World era. Of course, the number is very small. After all, the big explosion swept away everything. These records were all written down from memory by the escaped spellcasters. However, as the number of researchers increases, the experimental records will become richer. The legends tried one after another and came up with various methods, but all failed. The best result is to limit the well water consumption to 1 gram per kilogram of body weight through a large number of experiments, which is then multiplied by a complex coefficient. In addition, the well water is diluted 10 times or 100 times to make medicine. As for advancing to a half-step legend, taking it directly is still the best and only way. In any case, previous research results are at the bottom, and many detours can be avoided. After sorting out these contents, Greed was full of confidence and submitted the research application again. 10 portions of well water, energy measuring magic arrays and corresponding casting materials, and 10 qualified high-level monsters. Elder Emma looked at Greed with a confused expression. Mage Nordmark, hey, the old man is asking me to call you Little Gretel. Little Gretel, do you really want to use the legendary resources in your name to exchange for these things? You have also seen the research process of predecessors. If you want to produce results from your research, a legendary resource will definitely not be enough. Yes, Gretel nodded matter-of-factly. Great Elder, I remember that there should be 4.5 legendary resources under my name, right? The ones before, plus the blood replenishing magic, plus the life monitoring magic, plus some other things. He counted his fingers one by one. I haven't calculated it in detail, but that's probably it. Leave one portion for Cyrilla, and another portion for Nevis. It doesn't matter if you spend the rest. In fact, it's more than that. He rescued the eldest prince and invited help to repair the Well of Eternity. Every transaction was recorded in Yangju Island's account for him. However, this style of waving away a lot of money still made Elder Emmett couldn't help but smile bitterly. Gretel did this simply because he wanted his barbarian follower to advance safely and without any side effects, without the upper limit being locked. Although, no normal person would do this to exchange 2 legendary resources for a half-step legend. But if you don't do this, you won't be Gretel. Elder Amat could not directly say you are not worthy of this, so he could only persuade him slowly. Little Greet, you are still young, and your journey has been smooth all the way. You may not think so. Sometimes, when you encounter difficulties in advancing, it is really different if you have resources and without resources. I know you have confidence in yourself, but you can't leave nothing for yourself. Oh, if you have resources, you have to use them. Gretel waved his hand nonchalantly. Don't worry, if you use it, use it. As long as it produces results, it's a good thing. Ahem, the old man won't advise you anymore. In addition to direct exchange, the old man has another plan. Do you want to apply to the Magic Academy for this research project? Elder Amat blinked his old eyes under his white eyebrows and smiled kindly and cunningly. In this case, the results will be shared with the elves when they come out. Of course, your research funds will also be paid by the Magic Academy. Gretel, are you rushing to send me money? You are begging me to come and gather the wool of the elves, right? It's the end of the month. The cat wants votes. There are already 3,000 votes. Will cat get 4,000 votes at the end of this month? 4,000 votes and 6 additional updates. The cat spins on the spot, turns into an invincible Hot Wheel, scratches its tail, and grabs the tickets on its tail. Everyone sticks their monthly tickets to the cat's tail. Thanks to Chang Lanju for the 20,272 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jiolan 2020. Chapter 1425. Since the elves must rush to send money, Gretel has no reason not to accept it. Legendary resources are still delicious. If you don't have to pay for them from your own pocket, don't pay for them from your own pocket. If you can't spend it yourself, you can also use it to exchange for ancient trees, magic equipment, and magic materials. It's also delicious to use to cultivate followers, bring it back to Nevis to train disciples, or replenish hospital reserves. Speaking of which, he should exchange one as soon as possible and ask Senior Brother or Archmage Haynes to send it back to the Kingdom of the Sun and then back to Nevis. As a teacher, he has done too little for his disciples and followers who stayed in Nevis. He should get more resources for them. Well, even if he really can't use it, he can exchange it for a batch of gold, silver, and gems to make Cyrilla's bed. Cyrilla's gold coin bed is never too much. Besides, if this project really yields results, it won't be the elves who benefit the most. Although others can also use it, the Well of Eternity and the World Tree are elven specialties, one of a kind. So Greed happily and confidently applied for 10 shares of water from the Well of Eternity and packed it up and took it away. Because there are many things and high value, in addition to Idion's help, the Magic Academy also specially sent a legendary elder and an ancient tree to escort. He looked at the short, fat old tree, studded with grapefruit-sized fruits, pulling out its roots and twisting and walking beside him. If he took one step, the leaves would sway twice. If he took 2 steps, the fruits would sway twice. Gretel really wanted to laugh. Of course, he didn't dare to laugh in the end. This ancient tree was a famous explosive ancient tree, and the fruits on the tree had thick skins and were covered with lines like turtle shells. It is said that during the war, this ancient tree took the lead and took root on the edge of the battlefield, turning its long branches into windmills. The fruits on the body were smashed one by one, on the demon's head. The explosions were continuous, making the demons wail repeatedly, and their limbs flew everywhere. He is indeed a veteran with meritorious service. If he really wanted to count his military merits, he would probably crush Gretel into the ground. Greed would not dare to laugh at such an ancient tree because of its appearance, as it personally escorted strategic supplies. Not only did he not dare to laugh at it, he also expressed to it respectfully. "You have worked hard." "It's not hard." The ancient tree stretched out a branch and put it on his shoulder, sending a gentle signal. "Cecilia said that your research has helped many children and will help more children. You are very good. I am very happy to be able to help you. Ah, do you know this ancient bomb tree and the ancient tree named Cecilia that Elder Melancilla used as an airship? Fortunately, I was respectful just now, otherwise, ancient trees can chat with each other, praise, and complain. Thank you for your help. To do this research, I may need to control many high-level monsters. I will ask you and your friends to help me in the future." "Haha, it's not very useful for you to ask me for this matter. I just throw fruits. You'd better ask Flamino." "Oh, you call it World Tree. If it's not available, go find Margotha. Her floral scent is useful for calming monsters. If you want to tie them, go to Varido, he is the strongest ancient vine, and you can tie them one by one." The ancient bomb tree chatters. Probably because no one usually talked to him, it was rare that he met someone who was willing to chat. He opened up the conversation and introduced a large number of ancient trees to Gretel. Not only did he introduce it, but he also specially gave him a piece of fruit and told him, "Take my fruit, they will all give you face." Gretel. Brother, you are a bomb fruit. Just let me carry you away like this? Are you sure you won't hit me halfway and blow me up? Greet took back the well water and quickly began research work. The first project is to test whether there is radiation in the well water. In the early years, including in the elf secret realm, the roots of the world tree were directly extended into the high concentration ore, right? Will the well water extracted in this way really be free of radiation? If he relied on radiation mutation to advance quickly, then he would rather give up this plan and find another way for Bernard to advance. But that's not necessarily the case. Judging from research records, the elves began to use well water when they were in the old world. It was impossible that there was strong radioactivity at that time. Greed was worried, so he opened the cloud chamber first, then raised the Geiger counter, and measured 10 portions of well water across the container one by one. Thank goodness there was no radiation. Even if Greed had the courage to open the container and measure them one by one, there was still no radiation. Perhaps World Tree is really quite powerful in this aspect, right? Although Gretel was thinking hard and couldn't figure out how it was done, if it was done, it was done. If it was done, it would be a great thing. Gretel was a little relieved and started to carry out the experiments one by one according to the previously designed experimental process. First, it is to detect the volume, quality, and energy content of the well water. Don't be anxious, take your time, and be sure to be accurate. He walked briskly around the laboratory, constantly checking the work of the researchers. Although previous research has been done and every well water has been recorded, this work must not be saved. The elves are way. After measuring various values, Greed still endured the heartache and took a small amount of well water to test the elemental composition. Well, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, carbon, sulfur, phosphorus, in short, there are all the common elements, and there are no particularly strange elements, especially no known radioactive elements. So the water from the well of eternity, how does it work? Gretel muttered. The energy measuring array told him that the energy density of the well water in the well of eternity was extremely high, especially the density of natural force. However, even magical power should have a material entity to carry it. In addition to the current physical elements, such as neutrons, protons, atomic nuclei, and electrons, what on earth is it that carries such a powerful force? This topic is too difficult. Not only does Greed not know it, but he also has no way of studying it. All he can do is conduct applied research based on the current situation. Is the monster coming? I'm coming. Idion rushed over. All the monsters participating in the experiment are under his control, especially his comfort and restraint. A group of elven spellcasters, ranging from half-step legends to high-level beginners. Although their spellcasting abilities are good, their instant reaction ability and close combat ability may not be that strong. If the monsters that drank the well water were in unbearable pain and started to rage, the only one who could ensure 100% control over them was the legendary warrior Udian. Let me take a look. The first one is the little spotted tiger cat Yug, high level and intermediate level, about level 15 to 16. Gretel took a look at the experimental plan. Since there is a lot of water in the well of eternity, he doesn't mind starting experiments with small-sized monsters first. After all, the smaller the body, the less well water is consumed, and you can try it a few more times and collect more experimental data. Even if it fails, the amount of well water consumed by 10 small monsters cannot keep up with that of an adult warrior. Yug. Is Yug coming? With a whooshing sound, a ray of light passed in front of his eyes so fast that Gretel didn't even see it clearly. He calmed down and looked around, only to see a little leopard lying on the top of the experimental cabinet where the chemicals were kept. No, a cat, no, a feline not much bigger than a normal house cat. It has colorful light brown fur, the tips of the fur are slightly shining with gold, and the fur is covered with black spots. It licked its paw slowly, looked down at Gretel, and turned a deaf ear to his shouts. I heard you, and I saw you looking for me, but I just didn't answer. The compliance of the experimental subjects is a bit low. Gretel, who had never raised a cat and had only watched the interaction between Brother Lin and Mr. Troca, did not know whether the tiger cat's behavior meant that he would be disobedient during the experiment. However, now that he saw the other person, he still raised his head and smiled. Yug. Are you Yug? Mum. Mr. Yug? Or Ms. Yug? Sir, the tiger cat jumped slightly and landed on the table in front of him. His voice was calm and thick, sounding like a middle-aged man. Gretel breathed a sigh of relief. Are you clear about the content of the experiment? Do you fully understand the consequences of the experiment? Are you voluntarily participating in the experiment? Drinking well water? In the best-case scenario, you will advance to a half-step legend. In the worst-case scenario, you will die. I know, I volunteered. Tiger Cat Yug answered smoothly. Gretel nodded and quickly pulled out a large spell scroll, which was full of experiment contents and related risks. In this case, please leave your mark here, a magic mark, a paw print, or any other mark. Do you understand the words on this? Do you want me to read it to you? Oh, I understand. The tiger cat jumped up, rolled on the scroll, and rubbed its head back and forth a few times. Finally, he waved his paws and grabbed twice at the signature area. Okay. Can we start? Of course. Please come here, we will weigh you, draw a little blood, and record your information. You were fasting this morning, right? Didn't you eat? It's so troublesome. The tiger cat snorted impatiently. Fortunately, these procedures were informed in advance. He arrived at the laboratory one day in advance and had a full meal last night. The faint fragrance of flowers entered through the window, soothing its mood in time. Yogurt held his chin up, slowly stepped on the scale, and stretched out a paw. Want to draw blood? Come on. The weight is weighed, the blood drawn, and the cells collected. Greet was worried and led it into the MRI machine. We will record your body changes, it will be a little noisy, please bear with it for the time being, try not to move, and stay still inside. Cut the nonsense. Well, water, hurry up. A small plate was handed in. The tiger cat lowered its head, licked the water, and then lay down peacefully. In an instant, the MRI machine that the Lord of Thunder was rubbing rang out with a loud bang. Meow. The last 2 days. The cat wants votes. Meow.